They'll be happy, won't they? Bloody happy with all their money and all their wins.
All their money is right. Bastards.
Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of RugbyPass Offload with me, Christina Mahon, and today I'm joined by Ryan Wilson and Simon Zebo. Guys, it's episode 10 of the podcast. How time flies. How are you both doing?
All
Very
good.
well.
All good this end. Tough result for us. Over in Glasgow, sadly, this weekend. I'm glad Jamie's not on the podcast this week.
What was the chat with Jamie like? Did you manage to wind him up?
No, I didn't manage to wind him up too much. I was too busy worrying about everything else, but he obviously took your cue and had some really stinking chat. He tried one line during the game and it just got a bit awkward.
Really? Did he try?
What was it?
No, he was just like, he almost tried a bit of shit chat, and it was like, I just said, "Oh, James, come on, mate," and even his teammates are a bit like, "Oh God."
Oh no! How was your fly half after it?
Oh mate, tough old place before old Brandon. Jesus. So for those that didn't watch the game, like Dylan, if he was here, he'd say he had no idea what had happened. I think we went 32 phases last play of the game, like 83 minutes or something. 32 phases, and then got a penalty, tapped, scored, and then he's banged it off the post. Bless him. So tough one to him to take, but that's the pressure that tens, I suppose, have to deal with, isn't it? And
Is he a young lad?
he's not too young. He doesn't get a huge amount of game time with some of the guys that are in front of him. So, you know, when you finally get your chance and then that happens, but now the boys have been good getting around him because they got to. But you've seen, like, if you watch it, when Dragons, they go to charge down and then he has to reset the ball, and you can just tell, like, all those little bits put people off, and you're like, oh God, here we go, come on, Brown, and then hits the post. It's the way they ran towards him to celebrate. I started heading in, and I was like, here I go. I'm going. And as I'm heading in, someone's like, oh, and I think they almost humbled themselves. They were like sort of cheering in his face, and they realised, we're being complete, and that tosses it. Reined it in a bit. But yeah, tough for him to take. And onto Europe this week. So an easy game against Exeter. We'll be all right.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk more about the Autumn Nations Cup and England's sudden death win over France. Was that finally some exciting rugby to watch?
Go on, Zeebs.
Yeah, I thought it was an exciting game. You know, it had the score was tight. It was, you could feel the pressure. But like, England kicked the leather off the ball, you know, and France didn't want to fall into the trap and start running it from everywhere. So I think the game itself could have had probably a bit more running rugby, but it was, at the end of the day, it was a final, and I was probably a bit disappointed. There was a few set pieces on halfway, scrums and lineouts, and they just didn't really want to run. It was just more territory based, but it was an exciting finish, and the sudden death definitely added to the experience of it. Yeah, I suppose it was a good final.
The last 10-15 minutes of the actual game before it came to that sudden death, you could just tell France, they almost didn't want to lose it, did they? They weren't going out to like finish it. They were just like trying to cling on, like, Jesus, some of like the knock-ons, and you're thinking, right, just play, even in your own half, just play and try and get the advantage, get a scrum, waste time. But they just bang the ball down the field trying to get it away, and you're like, oh, please keep hold of it. Yeah, you must have been rooting for France pretty heavily, eh? Zeebs? Very
heavily, yeah. Just obviously, I never want England to win, but I have a lot of friends playing in that French team, so I was gutted for them. I thought everybody had written them off before the game, and even the French media were describing it as la farce, as Christina put it. But yeah, they were just given no chance, and they probably should have won it, you know. And the balance of play, I thought they were the better side. A few mistakes, and they win the game. So yeah, it's a learning curve for them, and they're certainly gearing up for that World Cup coming up.
What is the TMO doing though?
I know, shocking.
What is he doing? He sat in the truck having a fag. Just not watching, because there was so many opportunities. And you're like, who's the 20 for France? Macalou, is it?
Sekou Macalou, yeah.
Oh, mate, like, that was not a knock on.
No chance.
Then they play it over and over and over, and even you watch it on TV and like, well, obviously the TMO is going to pick it up. He's going to signal it down. and he doesn't. And you're like, hold on a minute, what's going on there? And then there was another one, a little knock on by England one that they missed, and you're just like, I was desperate for the French to win. I reckon, there was a couple big calls missed there.
Yeah, like they shouldn't be getting those big calls wrong. Okay, if the ref misses it, but you have the 2 touch judges and the TMO. Like, these games are so important, to lose them over these little minuscule things, I think is, it's wrong. Otherwise, don't have a TMO and let the ref call everything. But you can't have him calling stuff and then not calling other things. It seemed to be half in, half out, and yeah, it just cost the French, I suppose, a final. Those young group of players, big game. So shame, yeah.
I kind of feel for Andrew Brace as well. Like, he's been on the receiving end of some very nasty comments since the Autumn Nations Cup final. Like, what do you think about the referees getting more and more public abuse recently?
It's tough on them, yeah. It is a very, very difficult job to do, and to get every call right is nigh impossible. So I think to point the finger solely at Andrew Brace isn't justified. It's not fair. I'd be more so annoyed at the TMO, who has those replays, who's not, engulfed in the atmosphere and the pressure from the players either side, and trying to get it in a split second. So, it's unfortunate because he's a top quality referee, really good guy, and just social media in general is quite toxic. There's a lot of people sitting at home on sofas thinking that they play in these big games. So it's disappointing to see, but it's the world we live in now, isn't it?
That's it. There's some ultimate morons out there now. Like, you look at some of them, like, even players, you get it as well. But at least as players, we sit on the bus afterwards, and a lot of players are like, I don't even want to read it. I actually find some of the comments hilarious. Like, there's times where I like jump onto it, let's see what's going on, and you find some of the comments are ridiculous, and you get people arguing about it. I mean, even stuff from this podcast, and then I saw people slagging me, and then Big Jim gets brought into it as well.
No way.
Big Jim, and then they start slagging Big Jim off. I had to text him and say, mate, sorry you've been brought into this. But you've got to look at it and laugh, but we can do that as players, whereas refs, you're on your own, really. I mean, after the game, I suppose you sort of part ways with the touch judges and head home on your own. And you're reading that stuff. I mean, some of the sickos were commenting on his father's obituary, was it?
Yeah.
They've written something about his old man, and then they were putting the comments under that, and you're like, what is wrong with some people? Oh God, what I'd do to get hold of some of them.
But the funny thing is, any time you get abuse on social media, you could walk past these people in the street and they would never say a word to you. They wouldn't even whisper it to you as you walk past them. It's just complete cowards, man. You'd want to have thick skin to just not even pay attention to these fools online.
Yeah, you all know who you are.
Anthony Foley used to always say, "You're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are." So,
exactly.
Medium there.
Well, guys, Eddie Jones said media criticism of the style of play is disrespectful. Is he right?
No, I wouldn't say so. I don't like their style of play. I criticise them. No problem. I think what they're trying to do is, during the World Cup, they actually played quite a bit, and they had a really good attack shape, and in the lead up to it as well. And now after the World Cup, they seem to be employing this huge kicking game, just kicking the leather off the ball, So I think probably building towards the next World Cup again, trying to go in with two different styles of play and two different game plans, being able to adapt on any given day. And if that's what the end goal is, you'd appreciate it. But if they're just probably gutted from the World Cup the way it ended, and they're just trying to play winning rugby, thinking it's just hoofing the leather off the ball, I think Six Nations, I don't think I'd like to think that style wouldn't win.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, how do you think the Eddie Jones debrief went now after this weekend?
What would his debrief? Well, they'd be happy. They won every game. So even though they scraped that last one, they're sat there with all, winning every game under their belt after winning a Six Nations Grand Slam as well. So they'll be happy, won't they? Bloody happy with all their money and all their wins.
All their money is right. Bastards.
So I'm delighted to say that we are joined by my favourite player and Ireland winger, James Lowe. Welcome to the podcast, James.
Thank you very much.
Well, James, congratulations on earning your first caps. So tell us a bit about what that meant to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's awesome, as a young fella, you always want to challenge yourself against the best, and to, be able to make my international debut, not for my country of birth, but for Ireland, it's been outstanding, and parents are very, very proud, and so is everyone, all the rest of my friends around the world. I got a fair few messages, and yeah, stoked,
Were you like straight on FaceTime to your parents after the game, after your first cap?
No, I was actually, I got filled up with a couple of beers straight afterwards, as I'm sure most initiations go. So not straight after, but as soon as I kind of got the call from Andy that he wanted me to come into camp, I rang my mum. She thought I was joking. My dad literally just sent back a thumbs up. He's I wouldn't say he's a simple, very old school. And then maybe an hour or two later, once he'd realised the significance of what had just happened, he sent me a nice message. So that was nice. And my brother and sister were over the moon. So it was cool. It was very cool.
Absolutely. Can you tell us about any of the initiations when you came into the Irish squad?
There wasn't, you hear of a lot of the old school sort of initiations that went on, but unfortunately fortunately or unfortunately, it's a lot more professional now. So yeah, obviously when you get your first cap, go back to the hotel, and you put up on your feet and told to sing a song. Mine went down like horrific. It was terrible.
What'd you pick?
I went with Wagon Wheel.
Okay.
So I thought people would jump in, but people love to see me come crashing down for some reason. So yeah, it was actually horrific, and I got sent a video of it. It's literally, I hope it never does the rounds in a WhatsApp group, because it's
really
bad.
bad.
I try and oh yeah, well done guys. Yeah, and try to get off, and Andy Farrell, he's like, no, you're singing it. You're finishing the song, sing. Yeah. So yeah, it was highly embarrassing, but a couple of pints after that, and there's no crazy initiations or punishments anymore. It's that's the professional era of rugby. So that's it.
Yeah, boo to that, eh?
Ryan, if you were in charge of the initiations now, what would you be? I'd say you have a rake of stuff already planned, do you?
Yeah, you're right. They've sort of gone out, eh? But you get a few on tour. When you go on like summer tours and stuff, that's when you can probably have a bit more fun. I mean, COVID as well at the moment.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there are a lot of rules about it. I'm sure the boys were. They had a fair few pints after the Scotland game anyway, but I was already thrown out in the rehab crew by then, so I had to be a bit more careful.
James,
I'd love to be in charge of initiations, Christina. I would absolutely love it.
I feel like that's
what you do is you're meant to keep them to yourself.
That's the role you were made for. I can see it.
Hell yeah.
They should bring you back into the squad just for that.
Yeah, baby. I don't know if Gregor would be that keen for that. That'd be the reason I'm out.
Yourself and Finn. Boom, out.
Well, as a newcomer to Ireland camp, what or who surprised you the most when you got in there?
There's a huge rivalry in Irish rugby. And, it's the same in every competition. So you don't want to like people, but unfortunately there's no dickheads, There's actually not, like, you don't get to that level if you're not a good person. So you kind of get in, and you've said things on the field. Like, I mean, what happens on the pitch stays on the pitch. I mean, you never go overboard on the pitch anyway. You get there and you're just like, man, this dude's actually not a bad bloke, is he? like Conor Murray's one of the nicest lads you'll ever meet. Omani, he's an old man, but jeepers, he's a very, very nice person. it's funny though, because a few weeks ago you were screaming at each other because he's wearing a red jumper and I'm wearing a blue jumper. You go together and you're sitting down having cups of coffee and tea and helping each other all of a sudden. So you get along with everyone. To be fair, it's the nature of the sport now.
So you sort of said that they were the ones you thought were dicks before you went in.
No. I just off the top of my head, that's just.
Oh,
what
right.
came.
Yeah. It's always the Munster Leinster, though, isn't it? It's always that.
What's the crack like in camp with that?
It's just a huge rivalry, isn't there?
Yeah, it's never any animosity towards like the Connacht lads or the Ulster lads, or vice versa. It's just always you're that little bit apprehensive going into camp about the Leinster lads and them, obviously, for us. But yeah, there, like James said, there was a few fellas that I thought I was going to hate, like Johnny Sexton, Ian Madigan, these guys. I just picture, like a Dublin D4 guy, and then I put these guys' faces right next to the put. Two of the nicest guys, and even to this day, probably two of the lads I talk to most or keep in touch with from back home, So it's just, it's funny though. It always seems to be that Munster Leinster thing. Even in camp, you'd be like, I'm not happy that I actually like this guy,
Yeah. 100%.
James, the real tell is, mate, now that you know them from camp, when you next play Munster, that's when you know if they actually like you, mate.
Yeah, I know. Actually, that came to my head as well, man, because I see, I'm the bloody centre of many, many off-the-ball incidents when it comes to that rivalry. And I know I can be a little bit of an instigator, but I actually don't go looking for it, but you always go to the line. Okay, that's never something in a review you want. It's like, well, how come you didn't do this? It's like, okay, well, I'm always there. Okay, and you want to be reined back. You never want to say, mate, you're soft. Why weren't you there? So, it'll be a good one. Maybe down on Stephen's Day. See how we go.
I heard Bundy Aki took over your role though at the weekend.
As mate, Bundy's my boy. I played with him in New Zealand. And
talking absolute smack, apparently.
Mate, he's always man. Like if you're in an empty stadium, oh my goodness, you can't. Like he's the only voice you hear. He's genuinely like, let's go, get off the line, like whacking people. But I mean, in fairness, he's like, his job is pretty much to be an enforcer and to run into a brick wall when told to. But I can definitely see how he rattles some feathers.
I think he does it in his own team though, man. Like, see, we spoke about it right at the beginning of this podcast when we played Connor, and it got awkward. It got awkward on the field.
I love that.
We were like, mate, it started getting a bit embarrassing. You almost feel like, oh, please. And the chat is that even some of the Ireland boys were like, oh God, please stop. Like you could tell they were getting a bit,
it's good to have him on your team. He's one of those sort of blokes you'd rather have him on your team than have him running down your channel. That's for sure.
Ryan, did any of the Scottish boys say what sort of chat was coming out of him, or?
Oh no, I can't.
Could you do your best Bundy impression?
No, I'm not very good at that either. But what can I say? I don't know. I can't say it without throwing anyone in the bus. So
safe to say, Ryan is a very big fan of Bundy's for sure. Well, James, so Eddie Jones described Ireland as a United Nations. How did the squad react to that?
Oh, did he? I don't know. Look, like my biggest problem with Eddie Jones is that he's a good coach, man. Like, man, if he talked that much and his team wasn't winning, that's when you can start really, really going at it, dude. But mate, he's a good coach. Don't get me wrong. And I mean, the whole residency thing for me, like sitting here, I'm just like, how is the opportunity come about that I can play for Ireland? Like I wasn't born here. I didn't grow up here. I literally came over at 24 and there was an opportunity through the rule book that I could eventually play international rugby for Ireland, which is pretty silly, like really, when you think about it, and hence why the rules have changed, but it probably shouldn't have taken that long. But sure, look, I know there's a couple of Ireland boys running around in England at the moment as well. So, I mean, kettle black sort of stuff, you know. Hot kettle, yeah.
When you were brought over at 24, mate, were you told, listen, this is potentially what's going to happen? Like, was that why you were brought over? Were you told, listen, if you stay here for this 3 years, was it 3 years?
Yeah, it was 3 years.
So right at the beginning of that 3 years, 24 years old, were you told you're potentially going to play for Ireland if you do well?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't in the conversation, you know. And I've been playing, you know, 20. Like, it's getting younger and younger when you start. I literally left school, went onto a max academy contract of $1,500 a year. You know, I thought I'd cracked it, and I'd been there for 5 years, and then thought, you know, this isn't. I always wanted to go play overseas. I didn't know too much about Leinster at the time. I knew that Europe had an amazing rugby competition that I wanted to be involved in, and it kind of just transpired like that, you know. Man, I wouldn't change anything really. I'm loving life at the moment.
You play any 20 stuff over in New Zealand? Did you do any of the age grade stuff or Maori stuff?
So I made the New Zealand schools when I was 18. I was a bit bigger than everyone then, so that always helped. And then I missed out on 20s. I missed out on New Zealand sevens. And then, you know, just played a lot of club rugby, fortunate enough to represent the Māori All Blacks, which is awesome. Like, that's my culture, you know, that's a part of like my family. So that there was hugely awesome. And then, you know, I'd been playing Super Rugby to, you know, I played 50 odd games for the Chiefs, which is like in Super Rugby, you only play 13 games in a season, and that's if you get to the finals sort of stuff. So, you know, I'd been playing at a very high level. I just missed cuts, and I just thought, you know, if an opportunity does come, and an opportunity came, and I was kind of talking to them. I was like, look, like, I know people don't leave young, but like, this is an awesome opportunity. And they were it was almost like a bit of like trying to see if I was actually being serious about this. I was like, look, like, mate, this is easily feasible for me. And, you know, I just jumped in the deep end, and now I'm over here, 28, loving life, living in South Dublin. I'm one of those D4 boys that Zebo was talking about. So, yeah, it's bloody awesome.
Fair play to you. It's a ballsy decision, and like a huge sacrifice to make, leaving all your family like that so young.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
money talks.
Thanks for saying. Yeah, thanks for saying. Yeah. Everyone's got a price for at the end of the day, and you know, I mean, financially, obviously, it's a lot prettier. And mate, I would be lying if I didn't say that, you know. So, but yeah, that's the hardest thing, is not being around my family. You know, like my first nephew was born. My sister's first was born literally just before I left. So obviously, I was there for her grumpy ass pregnancy, and then her, you know, to be there was awesome. And now, you know, I'm seeing birthday pictures on, you know, via Zoom or Skype or however, and you know, Christmas isn't quite the same. But yeah, like, that's a price you pay, and you know that before you sign. It's not, I wasn't forced to come over here, you know. So but yeah, that is the toughest part, man, just not being around my family all the time. But sure, look.
Right. Well, sorry,
Christina, for asking the questions. I know you wanted to ask them.
Do you know what? I'm actually so happy that you guys finally contributed to an interview.
Oh,
like this. I am so happy. See, I knew these guys were fans of you. Ryan was talking shit about you a few weeks ago, but I knew it was just because he was a fan. No, I'll move on. So, James, do you think that Ireland are a significant step behind England and France right now?
Oh, good question. I'll be as politically correct as I can be, but I don't think you're far off in saying that those two are the two strongest teams in Europe at the moment, for sure. I mean, England defensively at the moment are smacking people in two-man tackles, and it seems like every single tackle. And France are throwing the ball around and playing an awesome brand of rugby. You know, I'd say in terms of Ireland, there's a bit of a teething process going on. There's a new coaching team. There's new players coming into the fray. But mate, this is all. I mean, it's international rugby. The unfortunate thing is that you can't have too much time. You can't keep leaning on that. It's a performance-based error, however you want to put it together, and performances count. After being in the Ireland setup, like, I think there is still leaps and bounds that we can go to really, like, it's not that we're not challenging them, but I mean, if you look at the Irish-English game, we were there or thereabouts, but we just couldn't, get over the line. We couldn't convert pressure into points. With Six Nations is going to be a real telling point, and I can see it another 2 gears within Ireland. When everything's clicking, and it needs to happen consistently for people to stop saying that England and France are the 2 best teams. But let's be realistic. Those 2 were the 2 best teams in that Autumn Nations.
Yeah, spot on.
Fair enough. Well, now, don't shoot the messenger, right? But Chris Ashton's commentary after the England defeat to you was that you were too big, too heavy, too slow. Have you got a response for him?
Jesus, you cut me deep here. I've been
This was in your email. You just obviously didn't read it.
What do you weigh?
No, I'm 106 kgs. And so I don't have any of the sort of, I don't actually listen to much of the reporting that's going on and all that sort of carry on, due to the fact that I find that a lot of the people who report on rugby will also report on the football on the weekend, and then if Wimbledon comes up, they're all of a sudden they're tennis pros, and McGregor will fight, and then they're all of a sudden they fought in an undercard in the UFC. So that's my general opinion of it. But I mean, for it to come from a player, like someone who's recently out of the sport, to another person who's just coming onto the international stage, it's so tough, because Zeds, how you miss one moment and all of a sudden Johnny May scores one of the tries of the year, and that there could have easily been stopped by me if I'd gone back, if I'd literally just done my job, and I'd take that on the chin any day of the week. But if you wanted to really look at what led up to that, really we got into the position we were in because I chased a kick and hit Billy, and then tried to be a nuisance at the ruck. I ran back to then turn around, chase a box kick, which ended up getting us a penalty. We kicked to the corner, and then that's how the line-out sort of happened, and I was absolutely bollocks at that stage, and that's no excuse by any means, because it's international rugby. This is what's expected of you. That's your job, and I should have been there, and I'll take it on the chin by any means. And then, like I said, he scores one of the bloody best tries of the year. So, but
it's a tough one, because in 9 out of 10 scenarios, Robbie or someone makes that tackle on the edge, and you can have that 20-second break, and it's not highlighted as much. And it's a tough one. I felt for you, because there was people coming out of the woodwork giving you all this heat, and it was completely unwarranted. I thought you actually had a really good game that day, and
thanks, mate.
One like that 20 seconds, as I said, that tackle's made, and that doesn't happen. You get your breather for that 4 phases that you put in just before.
Yeah. It is crazy, and everyone coming out of the woodworks, and like I said, I'm not subscribed to The Independent, or I don't read all that sort of stuff, because if you do, you start getting opinions from people who haven't played rugby since schoolboy stuff. I could have made it. That's what they say at the pub, and you read all those opinions, you dig yourself into a hole. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's so many other aspects to that game that caused, if we had won that, if we had say we'd won that game, barely a thing would have been said. It would have been Johnny May's amazing try. It wouldn't have been, Lowe didn't chase back. It's such a fickle game. And the way I like to look at it is that, literally, as a sportsman, you literally have an exam every single weekend, and it's not just one person marking this exam. It's all of a sudden it's the X amount of people sitting at home on a TV, they're all marking the exam as well, and they're all pointing the finger, and they've all got a voice on social media, and they're not afraid to use it as well. So, and I know that's part and parcel with professional sport. That's what you sign up for in a way, but it's the unfortunate that's unfortunately what happens.
Yeah,
So,
well put. Yeah, I agree.
just take it on the chin, mate. Like the sun's going to come up, and I'm going to get another chance. And Jesus, if Chris Ashton was there,
yeah, that would be a nice matchup. I'd like to see that. I'd pay to watch that now. I'd pay to watch that.
God. Well, James, we won't keep you any longer. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have you on. And best of luck with the rest of the season and Six Nations, hopefully, next season.
Best of luck,
awesome.
Yeah. Best of luck with the injury. And we wish Leinster all the worst for the weekend, but...
Nah, hey, good luck to you as well, man.
Champion.
Cheers,
Thanks
guys.
so much, James.
Easy.
Right, well, Ryan, we're going to get back to you, the question you've been dying for me to ask you. So obviously, I'll say it again. So Eddie O'Sullivan said Scotland have a deluded notion that they are actually better than they are. Ryan, is this harsh or does he have a point?
I think he has been affected by the COVID pandemic. And he's obviously being a little bit lonely, a little bit unloved. And he's like these guys on Twitter that wants a bit of love. He just wants to throw some crap out there. So we talk about him and we're feeding him at the moment. I'm not sure what he wants the Scotland camp to do. I don't know what comments he's talking about. But if it is Gregor going out and saying, listen, we're confident we're going to go over and win, what would he rather the coach do? I mean, when he's coaching a team, he would have, I don't know, who did he coach? He coached Ireland, then Biarritz at one point, was he? When he was coaching a team and he thought, oh, God, this is going to be a tough one this week, did he think to go, oh, we're going to struggle this week, we're probably not going to win? No, that's not what you're going to say. You're going to talk your team up. That's what you do as a coach. And I don't think... Even if, after the last 8 games that Scotland have played during that Six Nations period and then the Autumn Nations Cup, I mean, they've won something like, I think they've won 5 of their games at the last 8, and the other 3, they were within 7 points before they played the Ireland game. So Scotland are getting better and we are progressing in the right way. But
I'd agree with him though, like with the whole progressing thing, like you've been saying that for over a decade, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think there's a little bit of arrogance there, and what he kind of means is that, what have you ever done? Like, you've never won anything, you're battling out for 4th and 5th every year in the Six Nations, never done anything in Europe, no Scottish team, but there's this level of expectation coming from nowhere, or arrogance, I think, and yeah,
is there an arrogance?
I think there is a little bit. Yeah, we used to call you the Glasgow All Blacks there for a while.
Hold on, you're still moving on to Glasgow now.
But
is the Munster man coming back out?
Scottish. In general, though, I thought I would have agreed with him over the last couple of years that I think that Scotland have I wouldn't say you're deluded. I wouldn't go as far as him now, but I can resonate with 1 or 2, of the points he was making.
But if you look at the results from Scotland and the last 2 competitions, let's forget the World Cup and move on from there. The last 8 games, they've won 5, and the other 3, they're within 7 points. So they're getting harder to beat. They are becoming the team that they want to be. That's what they keep hearing them talk about. We want to be a more difficult team to beat. This was obviously different because Ireland put a lot more than the +7 points on them. But up until that game, you can see where the growth is. And I just think this was one of the games where Scotland didn't perform anywhere near what they have been over the last 8-9 games.
When did Gregor come in again? I can't remember. When did he...
Tony would have left.
Did he have a full cycle before the World Cup? No.
I think he will have, mate. Yeah, because I went to the 2015 World Cup with Vern. And then it would have been around 2016, 2017. So he would have had near enough a full cycle. So that's where your argument comes in. But I just think he's gone a bit overboard there. I think Scotland are going in the right direction. And
he's probably gone a bit overboard. Yeah, I'll agree he's gone a bit overboard, but I can understand what he means a little bit.
This is what these people in the press need to do nowadays.
That's it. They just have to be controversial, correct?
To try and get the next job.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm just waiting for Christina to do it. Say something really controversial on here.
Scotland or shit.
Come on, Christina, give it to me.
I don't think about if you ever catch me in a bad mood, I'll say something really controversial, and I'll offend everyone. So you don't want that. Right. Well, we'll move on. So Thomas Francis described Faletau and Tipperick as unplayable after they combined to help Wales beat Italy. Ryan, tell me about your back row battles with them.
I mean, I always know coming up against Tipperary, there's always talk of him. Like there's always, the coach will always bring it up before you play him, whether it's club or country. You go through, right, what threats have they got? And he was always someone that would always be spoken about because he was so strong over ball. So that's probably the main thing. And do you know what? He's not that tall a bloke, but he's bloody good in the line-out as well. So, he's impressively good in the line-out. So it's, that's the main thing with him. Like one of these players that just week in, week out does the right things, and he doesn't really seem to have a bad game.
He's unreal. What a player.
Yeah, he's a good defender, old Tips. And he's even pretty slick in attack as well.
Unbelievable wheels, man. Do you see some of the tries he's running in for Wales over the past, say, 12, 18 months? Man, he's got serious wheels. He's like another midfielder, you know. He's lovely, subtle hands. And, I rate him really, really highly. I actually
think I swapped my first cap. I think I went and swapped my national jersey with him. Because I came on as a sub against Wales, and I went in the change room to swap my shirt with him. And as you do, they usually first cap, they'll say, "Oh, listen, keep your shirt and take mine." When I walked into the change room, I was looking around thinking, "Where the fuck is he? I can't find him anywhere." Because he wears that bloody blue scrum hat all the time. I thought he was bald.
Go away!
I genuinely thought he was bald. I'm looking for this bald bloke, and I'm like, "Fucking no, he's not in it." And I'm like, "Sorry, boys, does anyone know where Tips is?" There he is. And I looked at him, I was like, "Fucking hell, is that him?" He looks weird without his scrum hat on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, all right, mate." And I genuinely thought he was bald. That's the amount I've seen him wear that blue scrum hat. You know, like people that's how you envisage them, like sitting at home watching TV with a blue scrum hat on.
Yeah.
Good. Well, on to the Rugby Championship, with the All Blacks finishing top and Argentina drawing with Australia. So before we move on to the Argentina game, I suppose the biggest talking point of the last few weeks has been Matera's vile racist tweets. I know he had his punishment rescinded by the Argentina Rugby Union amid reports of a player revolt if they didn't. Like, how poor was that, Zebo?
Yeah, pretty poor, I think. Disappointing, you know, like it's not as if those tweets are 20 or 30 years ago, you know, they're only 7-8 years ago, so it's pretty disgusting. And you know, people, you know, say he can change or whatever, but I think if you're saying things of that, you know, of that severity, I think you just probably get better at hiding it, you know, hiding your racism. I think that's very prominent in this day and age. A lot of people are just, you know, closet racists, and I'd never expect to have seen something like that. I'd never, ever play in a team with him in a change room, or someone like that, or someone who's done something like that in the past. I think, to say something like that, it wasn't exactly a slip of the tongue or something. That's literally one of the worst things you can say, or one of the worst mentalities you can have. And I've spoken to people who know him, and they say, you know, he's had a tough childhood and he's been through a lot, so you can understand. But moving away from him, you can't understand anything. No, I just understand, is the point of view that he might have changed and rugby might have helped him grow, but I still think he's just better at hiding it, like a lot of other racists. But the more disappointing thing would be World Rugby, for sure, that it took them 2 weeks or something to say something, to even more than 2 weeks. I think they said something like they were investigating or trying to find out. Like, the tweets are there, like black and white. You look at them, you read them. Like, surely they've had dialogue with the UAR before this. So I just think it's very disappointing. Ugo Manya put it quite well in his chat with BT Sport, you know, that rugby wants to combat racism until rugby has to combat racism. And it's very, very disappointing that nothing has been said or done. And it was such a great opportunity to do so.
Is that what it took for Oogs to sort of say something for them to make an action, was it?
He was the first person that came out and said that he was disappointed in World Rugby and properly had a go at them. everything up until then had been just specifically about Matera and the Comets. You know, pretty much like the World Rugby hadn't been highlighted like they were by Ugo brilliantly. So, and literally it was the next day or 2 days later that they released an official statement. But it's still over 2.5 weeks since they'd come out. I just think it's, very, very poor form.
Especially with them pushing all, everything else with going on with Black Lives Matter and stuff, and with the microscope on at the moment, you'd think, come on, act on it a bit quicker than that.
Yeah, but it just shows you that it's just a tick of the box. Like they're just keeping up with the trend, and it's just a few clicks. It's not at the forefront of their minds. It's not something that they're, trying their hardest to eradicate. Clearly, if it's taken them over 2 weeks to say something, but that's something in general. It's not even something specific. They've had over 2 weeks to come up with, change that they could enforce, or a punishment that they can enforce, or something. But no, 2 weeks to just say bullshit, basically, that, oh yeah, we're looking at the situation. Go over here. It's pathetic.
Right, well, we won't talk about it anymore. The World Rugby have named their team of the decade, and I know you guys have had a look at it. So I suppose, which of those 15 oh, did you? Did you not look at it?
Jokes. I saw it.
I had a little flick over it.
Oh, God. Well, which of
again,
those...
I'll get it up on.
There was a glaring omission at fullback. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, which of those 15 names was your toughest opponent? Zebo, I'll ask you first, because clearly Ryan hasn't looked over it.
I have looked at it. I've just forgotten, all right? I've looked at it because I saw Conor Murray at 9 and thought, no chance.
That's harsh. I'd say my toughest opponent out of there would probably be, I'd stick with the New Zealand boys, either McCaw or Carter. I'd probably sway towards Carter, yeah. Dan was incredible, very difficult to read. Unbelievable passing game, unbelievable attacking running game, big fend. He just knew how to get that All Blacks team ticking, and they played some unbelievable rugby. And any time you were playing against him, even when they when he was playing with Wrestling Metro and came to Munster, I was just in awe of him. Yeah, it was very, very difficult to play against him. He's a quality operator.
Conor got stick because people were saying surely he's not a better 9 than Aaron Smith, and then they were also saying, does George North really deserve it over Julian Savea as well? What are your thoughts on that?
I love George. He's a lovely fella, but yeah, not having Julian in that team is probably a little bit tough on him. Considering just the amount of tries he scored for the All Blacks. Past couple of seasons, definitely George had been probably playing a little bit better than him. He didn't go too well in Toulon, I don't think. And but when he was playing for the All Blacks over the entirety of the decade, he has to be up there. So he's been running in some serious tries for the All Blacks in the past 5-6 years.
And Ryan, obviously you don't think Conor deserves to be there ahead of Aaron Smith, do you?
Oh, he's a good player. But I just, someone like Aaron Smith, I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? It's a decade's a long time, isn't it? They shouldn't have done a decade-long team. That's just because, when did Brian O'Driscoll retire? 2014, wasn't it?
So surely he's not the best player of the decade then, do you know what I mean? Like he's only played 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And he's probably injured for a lot of those in the latter years, so... Yeah, take it with a pinch of salt. It's definitely not the team of the decade. Like there's probably a lot of people you'd swap in and out, but it's a good team nonetheless. But I back Conor to go in there for sure. I think him and Johnny are, they were huge contributors in Ireland's success over the past number of years. So. It's not a big shock that Conor's in there at all.
There you go, Ryan. Someday we'll just have to get Conor on when Ryan's on, and they can just hash this all out.
He would never come on.
You've asked me, and the one person saying is Conor Murray. I agree with Martin Onu, unbelievable. But 10 years is a long time to think back. I agree with you. I don't really know much about rugby anyway, but I've only started really looking into rugby because of this bloody podcast.
There you go. Would you know does anybody know what the selection process was as to how it was decided on these 15 guys?
Some bloke on his computer.
Yeah, it seems like a popularity contest.
Absolutely. Right. Well, we'll move on because there was a story today that over 70 former players have asked a law firm to start legal action against the governing bodies, having endured the after effects of concussion, including symptoms suggesting early onset dementia. So guys, like, is this something that worries you personally?
100% it worries me. I already worry about it because my memory is terrible and you do get whacked in the head a lot. And it's not even the concussions, it's the constant smacks in the head. But you know what you're sort of going into when you start playing rugby. You know, that's when you get to this level, you know that you're going to get hit in the head. Because when you carry the ball, especially when you're carrying like a forward, Zeebs will run upright because he'll run around people, whereas I'm not as skillful. So I have to try and run through people and it doesn't work. And I put my head down and end up running at knees, clattering my head off the top of people's knees 10, 12 times in a game. Clattering rucks, again, Zeebs, not too much to worry about because I hit rucks, he won't.
True.
Trying to hit like 15, 20 rucks a game where you're just belting in. And when your shoulders are as dodgy as if, have you seen the slopes on these? Finn, old Finn Muscle, the Russell, he laughs about mine. My shoulders are wrecked, so I end up using my head to like wedge people out of rucks and stuff. So it is a worry because I'm already forgetful and I forget stuff from games and all sorts. But the care that goes into it at the moment, you've seen such a shift over the last, I'd say, 4 years, 5 years. There's been a huge shift in how it's treated. Like from when I first started at Glasgow to now, the amount of people that are getting pulled out of games, guys getting pulled off the pitch that are like, hold on a minute, why am I even going off? So there is a hell of a lot more care about it. You do worry about it, but I feel like at the moment we're being looked after. So maybe these guys felt they weren't looked after, but then the knowledge wasn't there, maybe.
Yeah, I think I agree. In the past, like before even TMOs, like you could get a whack in the head, get up, stumble 3 or 4 paces and you'd stay on the pitch. You know, nothing would be said. There's no HIAs, there was nothing. You know, so, you know, if that happens to you a few times a year and you continue to play, like nowadays, if you got a bang in the head and you continue to play, everybody's like, my God, that's so dangerous, you know. But imagine how many times that would have happened in, be it training or matches or, yeah, the protocols probably weren't there. So, yeah, it's not a great look that a lot of players are coming forward and have these symptoms and these signs of damage. I suppose that's, yeah, very scary.
And Zebo, is it a conversation that's been had between current players at the moment?
Yeah, a little bit. People are definitely more aware of the, you know, of the symptoms. You know, if you got a bang at the weekend, people would be more, you know, willing to come forward and speak to doctors about it. I think, as opposed to in the past. And yeah, players will be. I'd say players are more mindful of it and a little bit more worried about it. Knowing what it can do to your post-rugby life. So it's not an everyday conversation, but the knowledge is growing and the knowledge will be there, I suppose.
And there is like a stringent like procedure you have to go through. I mean, I've been pulled off the pitch where I've thought there's nothing wrong with me. And then you have to go through and you have to list 10 words, which is hard enough at times. And you're absolutely knackered 70 minutes into a game and you're sat. And now they do it on an iPad. Usually you could remember all the words, but this iPad starts reading them out. You're like, oh no. And I just end up listing 20 to 25 different words to try and just get one of them right. But you do that and then you're not allowed back on the pitch and you have to go through protocols of wait until you've got no symptoms, a bike, a run, a bit of contact. So they are making massive strides in how they look after players. And I completely agree with Zeebs. The amount of guys now that are definitely more aware of it. Like I think back to 10 years ago, you get a head knock and you'd have a sore head the next day. You wouldn't really think anything of it. And guys that had blurry vision or slight headaches, but just carry on. Whereas now you're definitely getting guys that are going, oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, something's not quite right. And the doctors are doing a lot about it. I'm still stuck in the old mindset. I get whacked in the head. I've always got a headache and always got blurry vision.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need to get your eyes tested.
No, I'm all right.
Do you need glasses?
No, I don't need glasses, no.
If your eyes are always sore and you're constantly getting headaches from somebody who does wear glasses, I think you might need to go and get your eyes tested.
You should probably talk to someone. That's not very good. Like,
the only worry about this at the moment is the union's in such a bad place with all this COVID stuff going on. You just worry, like, these guys going in and suing the rugby unions and all this kicking off when everything's going on with COVID and stuff at the moment. You're like, not another blow to rugby. You worry what it's going to do to rugby, because also, you know, you get these people, complete nutters, coming out saying, "Oh, we should take tackling out of the game." Like, you know, we as rugby players, we understand like what it involves, and as a parent, when you let your kids play rugby, like my mum and dad did, they knew you're going to pick up injuries and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Try and steer them towards the backs if you're really worried. Keep them out the forwards, but this is what comes with the sport, and that's why people love it. And that's where I worry that things like this will, you know, just take a lot of the competitive stuff out of the game. There's obviously things that they can try and do, but yeah, it just worries me what's going to happen with the sport if things like this keep coming up. And I suppose that's why they've been so strict with it.
Well, that's it from us. Thanks to James Lowe, Ryan Wilson and Simon Zebo. And thanks to you for listening. More offloading next week. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts so you get it as soon as it's released. Leave us a rating and review if you can. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube as well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.